The small human ship, Harmony, drifted through space like a lost metal bird. Ambassador Taman stood at the bridge window, watching distant stars twinkle in the endless black. He was tired. 3 months of failed trade talks with alien species had left him feeling like humanity would never find its place among the greater powers of the galaxy. "Sir, we're getting something strange," said Bo-Ra from her position at the communications desk. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. "It's not like any signal I've seen before." Taman walked over to look at her screen. Lines of data scrolled past in patterns that hurt his eyes to follow. "What do you think it is? A distress call, maybe? But the technology is way beyond ours." Bo-Ra frowned and adjusted some settings. "It's coming from the Valoran sector." Wu Jin looked up from his weapon station. "The Valorans? Those crystal people who think humans are barely smart enough to tie our own shoes?" "The same ones," Taman said. He remembered his one meeting with a Valoran diplomat. The alien had spoken to him like he was a child, explaining simple concepts, very slowly. It had been embarrassing and frustrating. "Should we check it out?" Bo-Ra asked. "We're already off course from our original mission." Taman thought about this. The smart thing would be to report the signal to Earth and let someone else handle it. The Valorans had made it clear they didn't want human help with anything important. But something about the desperate tone in the alien transmission made him hesitate. "Set course for the signal source," he decided. "Let's see what's happening." The Harmony changed direction, its engines humming softly. 3 days later, they arrived at coordinates that should have held a Valoran research station. Instead, they found chaos. The station was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It looked like a giant crystal flower floating in space, with petals made of some clear blue material. But now those petals were cracked and dim. Emergency lights blinked red across its surface. "My God," whispered Bo-Ra. "What happened here?" Before anyone could answer, their communication system came alive. An alien voice spoke in accented but clear human language. "Unknown vessel, this is Chief Scientist Kirathon of Valoran Research Station 7. Please identify yourself." Taman activated the reply system. "This is Ambassador Taman of the human ship Harmony. We received your distress signal and came to offer assistance." There was a long pause. When the alien spoke again, its voice sounded surprised. "Humans? You came all this way because of our signal?" "Yes. May we dock? We'd like to help if we can." Another pause, even longer this time. Finally, Kirathon said, "Docking Bay 12 is operational, but I must warn you, Ambassador Taman, there is nothing you can do to help us. Our situation is beyond hope." The Harmony landed in a bay that seemed designed for much larger ships. As they walked through the station's corridors, Taman was amazed by the beauty around him. The walls were made of the same crystal-like material as the outside, and they glowed softly with inner light. But that light was fading, and many sections were completely dark. They met Kirathon in what looked like a control room filled with floating displays and strange instruments. The Valoran was tall and thin, with skin that looked like living crystal. Patterns of blue light moved slowly under the surface, but those patterns seemed weak and flickering. "Welcome to our dying station, humans," Kirathon said. Its voice was musical but sad. "I am surprised you bothered to come." "Why wouldn't we come?" Taman asked. "You sent out a distress call." Kirathon's crystal features shifted in what might have been surprise. "Most species have ignored our calls for help. The few who responded said our problem is too big to solve. They were probably right. What exactly is the problem? Bora asked, looking at the strange displays around them. Kirathon gestured to a large holographic image that appeared in the center of the room. It showed a star system with 12 planets orbiting a central sun. But the sun was wrong somehow. Instead of burning bright yellow, it pulsed with an angry red light. Our home star is dying, Kirathon explained. It should burn for another billion years, but something is making it collapse much faster than it should. We have perhaps 18 of your months before it becomes a white dwarf. When that happens, all 12 of our worlds will become frozen rocks. 6 billion Velerans will die. Wu Jin stared at the hologram. That's terrible. What's causing it? We don't know. Some kind of stellar phenomenon we've never seen before. Our best scientists have worked for 3 years trying to understand it. We've tried everything we can think of, but nothing works. The star keeps dying. Taman studied the display, even though he understood very little about stars or planets. What have other species offered to do? Kirathon's light patterns grew dimmer. The hegemony said they might help us evacuate 1 or 2 worlds if we give them our technology. The Zenthari offered to take some of our children and raise them as their own. The Corian traders said they could move small groups to other systems for a price we cannot pay. What about actually fixing the star? Bora asked. They all said it was impossible. Even if the technology existed, the resources required would be beyond any single species. No one thinks it can be done. Taman was quiet for a long moment, staring at the dying star in the hologram. Finally, he looked directly at Kirathon. We'll find a way to help. The Valoran's crystal body seemed to flicker. Ambassador Taman, I appreciate your sentiment, but humans don't have the technology to accomplish what our greatest minds cannot. Your species is still learning to build basic space stations. Maybe, Taman said, but we don't abandon people who need help. That's not who we are. Kirathon stared at him for a long time. The alien's light patterns shifted through colors Taman had never seen before. When it spoke again, its voice was very soft. You really mean that, don't you? Even knowing how impossible this seems, you would try to save us. Yes, Taman said simply. We would try. For the first time since they had arrived, Kirathon's inner light grew brighter. Perhaps you could stay for a few days. Let me show you our research, our data on the stellar collapse. If nothing else, maybe fresh eyes will see something we have missed. As they followed the alien deeper into the station, Bora whispered to Wu Jin, Do you really think we can help them? Wu Jin shrugged. Probably not. But Taman is right. We have to try. Behind them, Kirathon moved with something that hadn't been there before. For the first time in 3 years, the Valoran scientist felt something strange and unfamiliar. Hope. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks, but Taman felt like every hour was important. He spent most of his time in his small cabin working on reports and presentations. The data that Kirathon had given him filled dozens of files, all showing the same terrible truth. The Valoran sun was dying, and no known technology could save it. When the Harmony finally reached Earth, Taman went straight to the Human Colonial Council building in Geneva. The council members were not expecting him. His original mission had been to negotiate trading rights with the Fethran Collective, not to get involved in alien disasters. Let me understand this correctly, said Council President Elena Vasquez, looking at the holographic display Taman had set up. You want us to commit our entire space fleet to saving aliens who have always treated us like children? Yes, Taemin said simply. Because it's the right thing to do. Council member James Wright shook his head. Taemin, be realistic. We barely have enough resources for our own colonies. The Mars terraforming project is behind schedule. The Europa mining stations need new equipment. We can't just drop everything to chase an impossible dream. It's not impossible, Taemin insisted. I've been talking to our scientists. Dr. Haijin thinks there might be a way. Dr. Haijin stood up from her seat in the observers section. She was young for such an important position, but everyone knew she was brilliant. May I present my analysis? President Vasquez nodded, and Haijin activated her own holographic display. It showed a complex diagram of the dying Valoran star, surrounded by what looked like a giant spiderweb made of metal and energy. The Valorans are right that no single technology can restart their star, Haijin explained. But what if we don't try to restart it? What if we stabilize it instead? How? Asked Wright. By building a massive solar collector network around the star. We take energy from other nearby stars and feed it into the dying one. Think of it like giving a blood transfusion to someone who's bleeding to death. Councilmember Sarah Chen leaned forward. That sounds incredibly complicated and expensive. It would be the largest construction project in galactic history, Haijin admitted. We'd need thousands of ships, millions of tons of materials, and the cooperation of multiple star systems. But the basic science is sound. Wright laughed, but not in a happy way. Thousands of ships? We have maybe 200 vessels in our entire fleet, and most of those are small trading ships and research vessels. Then we build more, Taemin said. We ask for volunteers. We use every factory, every shipyard, every resource we have. And what do we get in return? Chen asked. The Valorans have never offered us anything valuable. They barely acknowledge that we exist. Taemin was quiet for a moment. He thought about Kirathon, about the hope in the aliens' crystalline features when he had promised to help. We get to be the kind of people who don't let others die when we could save them. The council room fell silent. President Vasquez stared at the holographic star, its angry red light filling the space above the table. Finally, she spoke. Dr. Haijin, what would you need to make this work? Everything, Haijin said honestly. Every ship we can build, every engineer we can train, every factory we can convert to produce solar collectors. And we'd need to start immediately. 18 months isn't very long. The other colonies won't like this, Wright warned. They're going to ask why we're spending their resources on aliens instead of improving their own lives. Then we'll explain. It to them, President Vasquez said. All in favor of Operation Stellar Shield? The vote was closer than Taemin had hoped. 7 council members voted yes, 5 voted no, but it was enough. Within a week, every human colony received the same message. They were asked to contribute everything they could to save the Valoran worlds. Ships, materials, people, ideas, anything that might help. The response amazed everyone. From the mining colonies around Jupiter came offers of rare metals and volunteer crews. The research stations near Alpha Centauri sent their best engineers. Even the small farming colonies on the outer rim contributed food supplies and offered to take over production duties so other worlds could focus on the rescue mission. Captain Dong Ho was put in charge of the space fleet. He was a veteran of the asteroid wars and knew how to organize large groups of ships. When he saw the list of volunteers, he had to sit down. Over 3,000 vessels, he told his aide. Everything from military cruisers to family trading. Ships! I've never seen anything like it. The Harmony became the flagship of the rescue fleet. Taemin insisted on returning to Valoran space personally, bringing with him the first batch of equipment and a team of human engineers. When they arrived, at Research Station 7, Kirathon was waiting for them. The alien scientist looked different somehow. The light patterns under its crystal skin were brighter, more active. Ambassador Taemin, Kirathon said as they met in the docking bay. We detected your approaching fleet. There are so many ships. Just the first wave, Taemin said. More are coming every day. Bora walked up carrying a large container of equipment. Where do you want us to start setting up the manufacturing stations? Kirathon stared at her. Then at the dozens of humans unloading cargo and equipment. You actually did it. You convinced your people to help us. It wasn't hard, Taemin said. Once they understood what was at stake, everyone wanted to contribute. But why? Kirathon asked. We have given you nothing. We have treated your species poorly, dismissed your achievements, ignored your offers of friendship. Why would you risk everything for us? Taemin thought about this. Because that's what friends do. And maybe it's time we became friends. Over the next few weeks, the Valoran system transformed. Human ships arrived daily, bringing equipment, materials, and workers. The quiet space around the dying star filled with the sounds of construction and the lights of welding torches. Dr. Haya Jin worked closely with Valoran scientists, combining human manufacturing techniques with Valoran understanding of stellar physics. Bora led teams of engineers from both species, teaching them to work together on projects neither could complete alone. Other alien species watched from a distance. Some were curious about what the humans were attempting. Others were skeptical, waiting to see them fail. A few were worried about what success might mean for the established order of galactic politics. Elder Nalthis, the leader of the Valoran people, sent a message to the construction fleet. It was broadcast on all frequencies so everyone could hear it. People of Earth, the message said, for 3 years we have faced our doom with dignity, knowing that death was coming for our worlds. We had accepted this fate. But you have given us something we had lost. You have given us hope. Whatever happens, we will remember that when the darkness came, it was humans who brought light. When Taemin heard this message, he felt tears in his eyes. Around him, human and Valoran workers continued their impossible task, building something that had never been attempted before. In the distance, the dying star pulsed its angry red light, counting down the days until everything ended. But now, for the first time in years, it wasn't counting down alone. 8 months had passed since the rescue mission began, and the space around the Valoran star looked like a giant construction site. Thousands of ships moved in careful patterns, building the largest structure anyone had ever imagined. The solar collector network stretched across millions of kilometers, its metal arms reaching toward distant stars like the fingers of a mechanical god. But today, everything was wrong. Dr. Hyajin stared at her instruments with growing horror. The numbers on her screens kept changing, and every change was bad news. She ran the calculations 3 times before accepting what she was seeing. Taemin, she called over the communication system. You need to get here right now. Taemin was in the middle of a meeting with Valoran engineers when the call came. He made his excuses and hurried to the science station where Hyejin worked. Her face was pale and her hands shook as she pointed to her displays. The star's collapse is accelerating, she said. It's happening much faster than we predicted. How much faster? Taemin asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Instead of 18 months total, we now have 90 days before the point of no return. 90 days before the star becomes too unstable to save. Taemin felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. He looked at the holographic display showing their progress. The solar collector network was only 60% complete. At their current rate of construction, they needed at least 4 more months to finish. Can we work faster? He asked. We're already working 24 hours a day, Hyejin said. People are exhausted. We're making mistakes because everyone is so tired, and we're still not going fast enough. The news spread quickly through the fleet. Within hours, several human colonies sent messages saying they were recalling their ships and workers. They said the mission was hopeless now, and they needed to protect their own people. Captain Dong-ho came to see Taemin that evening. The old captain looked tired and worried. We're losing ships every day, he reported. Not just the colonies pulling out. People are giving up. They think we can't win. Can we? Taemin asked. Dong-ho was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe if we had started a year earlier, or if the star wasn't dying so fast. But now? He shrugged helplessly. That night, Taemin couldn't sleep. He walked through the corridors of the Harmony, thinking about failure. 6 billion Valorans would die because he had made a promise he couldn't keep. The worst part was that Kirathon and the other Valoran scientists never blamed him. They just worked harder, knowing that time was running out. The next morning brought news that made everything worse. 3 more human colonies had recalled their fleets. The massive construction project was falling apart as ships and workers disappeared. Taemin called a meeting of all the remaining fleet commanders. They gathered in the main conference room of the command station, a mixed group of humans and Valorans who looked exhausted and defeated. I know things look bad, Taemin began. I know many of you are wondering if we should give up and go home. Maybe we should, said Commander Lisa Park from the Mars Defense Fleet. We've lost 6 ships, already to construction accidents. How many more people have to die for a plan that isn't working? The plan is working, said Bora from her position at the engineering station. It's just not working fast enough. That's the same as not working at all, Park replied. Elder Nalthis spoke up from the Valoran side of the table. The alien leader had arrived just days before to see the project firsthand. Commander Park is right to be concerned about her people. We do not expect humans to sacrifice themselves for us. That's not the point, Taemin said firmly. We didn't come here because we expected something in return. We came because leaving you to die would make us less than who we want to be. He stood up and activated the holographic display. It showed the dying star, now pulsing with more violent bursts of energy. Around it, the partially completed solar collector network looked small and fragile. I know we might fail, Taemin continued. I know some of you have families back home who need you. If anyone wants to leave, I understand. But I'm staying. Even if I'm the only one left, I'm staying until the end. Commander Park looked uncomfortable. Taemin, one person can't save a star. No, agreed Kirathon, but one person can inspire others to try. The Valoran scientist activated its own display, showing the construction progress from a different angle. In 8 months, we have accomplished something that should have taken 5 years. Human engineers have invented new manufacturing techniques that we never imagined. Human workers have pushed themselves beyond what we thought was possible for organic beings. But it's still not enough, Park said. Maybe not, Kirathon admitted. But Bora has been working on something that might change everything. All eyes turned to the young human engineer. Bora looked nervous as she stood up and activated her own holographic display. It showed technical diagrams that were hard to understand. But at the center was something that looked like a massive bomb. I've been studying human fusion reactors and Valoran stellar science, Bora explained. What if we don't wait to finish the solar collector network? What if we use our fusion reactors as temporary stellar stabilizers? Dr. Hyjin leaned forward with interest. How would that work? We detonate our most powerful reactors directly in the star's core. The explosion should provide enough energy to restart the fusion process, at least temporarily. Then we finish the collector network while the star is stable. That's incredibly dangerous, Hyjin said. If the timing is wrong, we could make the collapse happen faster. And whoever pilots the reactors into the star won't be coming back, added Captain Dongho. Bora nodded sadly. I know. But it might be our only chance. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the diagrams, thinking about what Bora was proposing. It was desperate and dangerous, but it might work. How many reactors would you need? Asked Taimin. All of them, Bora said. Every fusion reactor in the fleet. And we'd need volunteers to pilot them into the stellar core. Commander Park stood up slowly. If we do this, if we give up all our reactors, we won't have enough power to get our ships home. The Valorans could help with that, Elder Nalthus said quickly. Our ships use different power sources. We could tow your vessels back to your space. If any of us survive, Park muttered. Taimin looked around the room at the tired faces of humans and Valorans. These people had already given so much. Was it fair to ask them to risk everything on such a desperate plan? We'll put it to a vote, he decided. Everyone in the fleet gets to choose. Stay and try Bora's plan, or leave now while there's still time. The voting took 3 days. When the results came in, Taimin was amazed. Of the remaining 2,000 ships in the fleet, only 300 chose to leave. The rest voted to stay and attempt the impossible. As they watched the departing ships disappear into hyperspace, Kirathon stood beside Taimin on the observation deck. Your species never stops surprising us, the alien scientist said. When we first met, we thought humans were primitive and emotional. Now we understand that your emotions are your greatest strength. Let's hope that strength is enough, Taimin replied, watching the angry red star pulse in the distance. They had 30 days left to save 6 billion lives. 29 days remained when the war fleet appeared. Wu Jin spotted them first on his long-range sensors. Contact at the edge of the system, he reported, his voice tight with tension. Multiple ships, military configuration. They're not showing friendly signals. Captain Dong-ho moved to the tactical station. What he saw on the displays made his blood run cold. 47 warships in perfect formation, their weapons powered and ready. At the center of the formation was a massive dreadnought that could probably destroy the entire human rescue fleet by itself. This is Admiral Vextool of the Hegemony Fleet, came a voice over the communication system. The alien's words were harsh and commanding. All vessels in the Valoran system will cease operations immediately and prepare for inspection. Taimin hurried to the bridge of the Harmony. Admiral Vextool, this is Ambassador Taimin of the Human Colonial Council. We are conducting a humanitarian Rescue mission under galactic law. Your mission is hereby terminated, Vexitol replied coldly. The stellar instability in this system poses a threat to neighboring star systems. We are here to establish a quarantine zone until the situation is resolved. Resolved? Taman couldn't believe what he was hearing. You mean until the star collapses and kills everyone? That is the natural course of events. Your interference could make the situation worse. All human vessels will withdraw immediately. Or face military action. Dr. Hyjin looked up from her station. Taman, we need 30 more days. If we stop now, even for a few hours, we'll never get the stellar stabilizers ready in time. Around the system, the human and Velaran workers continued their frantic efforts. They were welding the final components of Bora's fusion reactors, preparing them for the desperate mission into the star's core. Every minute was precious. Admiral, Taman said carefully, we understand your concerns, but our scientists believe the stellar collapse can be prevented. Give us 30 days to prove it. I have studied your species file, Ambassador, Vextool said with obvious disgust. Humans are emotional and irrational. You make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. This rescue mission is a perfect example of your primitive thinking, Elder. Nalthus appeared on the communication screen beside Tamin. Admiral Vextool, the Valoran Confederation requests that you allow the human mission to continue. The Valoran Confederation will cease to exist in 30 days. Vextool replied. Your requests are meaningless. All ships will withdraw or be destroyed. The hegemony fleet moved into attack formation. Their weapon systems came online, filling space with the glow of charging energy banks. The human ships were mostly construction vessels and transports. They had some weapons, but nothing that could stand against a full military fleet. What do we do? Asked Commander Park over the fleet communication system. We can't fight them and finish the mission at the same time. Captain Dong Ho studied the tactical display. The hegemony ships were positioning themselves to attack the most important construction sites. If they opened fire, months of work would be destroyed in minutes. We fight, Dong Ho decided. All combat vessels, take defensive positions around the work sites. Continue construction until the last possible moment. Captain, said Wu Jin quietly, we're going to lose. Probably, Dong Ho agreed. But we're not going to make it easy for them. The first shots came without warning. Hegemony destroyers opened fire on a human construction platform, their energy beams slicing through metal and crystal. The platform exploded in a ball of fire, taking 50 workers with it. Return fire, Dong Ho ordered. All ships, defend the work sites. Space erupted in violence. Human ships fired desperately at the overwhelming hegemony force while trying to protect the civilians who were still working on the solar collector network. Explosions lit up the darkness as ships on both sides took damage. But something unexpected happened. As the battle raged, new ships began appearing at the edge of the system. These weren't human or hegemony vessels. They came from a dozen different species, flying in loose formations that suggested they weren't official military forces. This is Captain Geltar of the Zenthari Peace Corps, came a new voice over the communication system. We're here to provide medical assistance to wounded civilians. And this is Trader Captain Morden of the Korean Free Fleet, added another voice. We bring supplies for the rescue workers. More voices joined in. Ships from species that had never worked together before were arriving to help. Some brought medical supplies, others carried food and equipment. A few even had weapons to help in the fighting. Admiral Vextool's voice cut through the chatter. All non-hegemony vessels will depart immediately. This is a military quarantine zone. Actually, said Captain Geltar calmly, under Galactic Council, Resolution 447, humanitarian missions take priority over military operations. We're not leaving. The battle became more complex as more species joined in. The Xanthari ships used their advanced shields to protect human construction workers. Quarian traders used their fast ships to deliver supplies under fire. Even some species that usually stayed neutral began helping in small ways. On the Harmony, Bo-Ra worked frantically to complete the fusion reactor modifications while explosions shook the ship around her. Almost done, she reported to Tae-min. Just need 12 more hours to finish the final calibrations. You might not get 12 hours, Wu Jin warned. He was coordinating the ship's defense while monitoring the larger battle. The hegemony is getting angrier. They're starting to target civilian ships directly. As if to prove his point, a hegemony cruiser opened fire on a Valoran transport that was carrying medical supplies. The ship exploded instantly, killing everyone aboard. That's when Elder Nalthus did something no Valoran had done for 1,000 years. The ancient alien reached out with its mind, connecting with every other Valoran in the star system. Suddenly, all the Valoran ships began moving with perfect coordination, like they were controlled by a single intelligence. "What's happening?" asked Taemin Kirathon, who was working beside them, looked up with wonder in its crystalline eyes. "The Elder is using the old way. All Valorans are linking their minds together." The effect was immediate and powerful. Valoran ships began working together in ways that seemed impossible. They anticipated each other's movements, shared information instantly, and coordinated their defenses perfectly. What had been a losing battle suddenly became more equal. But the fighting was taking its toll on everyone. Human ships were running out of ammunition. The Xanthari medical vessels were overwhelmed with wounded. Even the mighty hegemony fleet was showing signs of damage. Admiral Vextol, Taemin broadcast on all frequencies. "Look around you. Look at what's happening here. Dozens of species working together, risking their lives for strangers. Is this really something you want to destroy?" "Sentiment and emotion," Vextol replied angrily. "This is exactly why lesser species should not be allowed to interfere in important matters." "Maybe," said a new voice, quiet but carrying clearly across all channels. It was Captain Dong Ho speaking from his damaged ship as he piloted it directly toward the hegemony dreadnought. "But maybe emotion is what makes us better than machines. Maybe caring about others is what separates civilization from chaos." His ship, damaged and leaking atmosphere, flew straight at the massive enemy vessel. At the last moment, Dong Ho activated every weapon he had left, creating a brilliant explosion that damaged the dreadnought's main weapons. The sacrifice shocked everyone into momentary silence. Then, across the system, human voices began speaking. Not orders or battle cries, but something else entirely. "This is Engineer Yuki from Construction Platform 7. Captain Dong Ho was my mentor. I'm staying to finish the mission. This is Dr. Martinez from the medical ship Hope. Captain Dong Ho saved my life once. I'm staying. This is Pilot Chen from Fighter Squadron 3. If Captain Dong Ho thought this was worth dying for, then I'm staying too." One by one, every human in the fleet made the same choice. They would stay and finish the mission, no matter what it cost them. Even Admiral Vextol seemed shaken by this display. His fleet continued fighting, but with less enthusiasm than before. In the engineering bay of the Harmony, Bo-Ra made her final adjustments to the fusion reactors. "They're ready," she announced. Who's going to pilot them into the star? The answer came immediately from dozens of volunteers. Humans and Velorans both stepped forward, ready to fly directly into the heart of a dying star to save worlds they had never seen. Looking at their faces, Taemin finally understood what Kirathon had meant about emotions being humanity's greatest strength. In a universe that often seemed cold and uncaring, the simple act of caring about others was the most powerful force of all. The dying star pulsed like a giant heart in its final moments, casting angry red light across the battlefield. Admiral Vextol's fleet had stopped shooting, but they remained in position, watching the desperate final preparations with cold interest. Doctor, Hyojin ran through her calculations one last time. The numbers were terrifying, but they were the best hope anyone had. "The fusion reactors are ready," she announced. "But we need someone to fly them directly into the stellar core. The pilot won't be coming back." In the small briefing room of the Harmony, 12 volunteers sat quietly. 6 humans and 6 Velorans, all ready to sacrifice their lives for others. Captain Dong Ho should have been among them. But his heroic sacrifice against the hegemony dreadnought had already cost them their most experienced pilot. "I should go," said Bo-Ra quietly. "I designed the reactors. I know them better than anyone." "No," Taemin said firmly. "We need you here to monitor the explosion and coordinate with the solar collector network." "Then I'll go," volunteered Wu Jin. "I'm the best pilot we have left." Before anyone could respond, an unexpected voice spoke up. "Actually, I believe I should be the one to make this journey." Everyone turned to see Elder Nalthis standing in the doorway. The ancient Veloran's crystal body glowed with inner light that seemed brighter and more focused than usual. "Elder," protested Kirathon, "you are the leader of our people. We cannot risk losing you." "My people are dying," Nalthis replied calmly. "If there is even a small chance my presence in the stellar core might help guide the fusion process, then it is a chance we must take. Besides, I am old. These young ones have full lives ahead of them. The radiation will kill you long before you reach the core," Dr. Hyojin warned. Nalthis's light pattern shifted into something that might have been a smile. "Perhaps not. We Velorans have certain abilities that we have not shared with other species. Our connection to energy fields might allow me to survive longer than you expect." Taemin studied the ancient alien's face. "What aren't you telling us?" "For 1,000 years we have kept our psionic abilities secret," Nalthis admitted. "We feared that other species would try to use us as weapons. But now, in this moment, secrecy matters less than survival. I can link my mind directly to the stellar core, guide the fusion process from within." Kirathon's crystal features showed amazement. "You're talking about the deep meld. No Veloran has attempted that in centuries." "Because none have had reason to try," Nalthis said. "But saving 6 billion lives seems like a good enough reason." Before anyone could argue further, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The dying star was entering its final collapse phase. They had less than 6 hours before the point of no return. "We go now, or we don't go at all," announced Bo-Ra, checking her instruments. The specially modified ship that would carry the fusion reactors was unlike anything that had ever been built. It looked more like a flying bomb than a spacecraft, with massive reactor cores taking up most of its interior. The cockpit was tiny and heavily shielded, but everyone knew the shielding wouldn't be enough. Elder Nalthis climbed into the pilot's seat with surprising grace for someone so old. "Ambassador Taemin," the alien called. "Please ensure that our people remember this day not as the day we nearly died, but as the day humans and Valorans truly became friends." "I will," Taemin promised. As the bomb ship pulled away from the Harmony, something remarkable happened. Every Valoran in the star system reached out with their minds, connecting with their elder. The psychic link created a network of consciousness that stretched across millions of kilometers, all focused on the impossible task ahead. The ship flew directly toward the dying star, its hull beginning to glow from the intense radiation. Inside, Elder Nalthis felt the heat building, but also felt the support of every member of his species. Their combined willpower helped him stay conscious as temperatures rose beyond what should have been survivable. "Approaching the stellar corona," Nalthis reported, his voice calm despite the circumstances. "Beginning final approach to the core." On the Harmony, everyone watched the display's intense silence. The ship was now just a bright dot moving through the star's outer layers, racing against time and physics. "Core penetration in 30 seconds, Bo-Ra announced. "All reactors show green. Fusion sequence is ready." Admiral Vextool's voice suddenly filled the communication channels. "Valoran ship, abort your mission immediately. Our sensors show that your fusion explosion might destabilize the entire stellar system." "Admiral," Taemin replied, "it's too late to turn back now." "Then you are all fools," Vextool said angrily. "You're going to kill everyone in 3 star systems to save a few billion Valorans." "Maybe," Taemin admitted, "or maybe we're going to save everyone. That's what hope means, believing in the best possibility even when you can't be certain." Inside the dying star, Elder Nalthis felt his physical body beginning to fail, but his mind, supported by thousands of other Valoran consciousnesses, remained strong. He could sense the stellar core ahead, a massive ball of collapsed matter that should have been burning with nuclear fire, but was instead slowly cooling toward death. "Core reached," he reported. "Beginning deep meld." What happened next was something that had never been recorded in galactic history. Elder Nalthis opened his mind completely, merging his consciousness with the quantum processes inside the star. For a brief moment, he became part of the star itself, feeling its pain and understanding its sickness. "Now," he whispered. "Detonate now." Bo-Ra triggered the fusion reactors. 12 of humanity's most powerful devices exploded simultaneously in the heart of the dying star, releasing more energy than some species used in a year. But the explosion was guided by Elder Nalthis's will, focused and directed by the collective mind of the Valoran people. The star convulsed. Its red light flickered and went out for a terrifying moment. Then, slowly, a new light began to grow. Not the angry red of a dying star, but the warm yellow of healthy nuclear fusion. "It's working!" shouted Dr. Hai-Jin. "The fusion process is restarting." Across the star system, the solar collector network that had taken so many months to build suddenly came online. Energy flowed along its metal arms, feeding power from distant stars into the newly reborn sun. The dying star drank deeply from this river of energy and grew stronger. Admiral Vextool watched in stunned silence as the impossible happened. The star that should have collapsed into a white dwarf was instead burning brighter than it had in centuries. His tactical computers, designed to predict military outcomes, had no data to process what they were seeing. "How?" he whispered. "Because they cared enough to try," said Captain Jeltar from his Zenthari medical ship. "Because they refused to accept that some things are impossible. but the celebration was cut short by a terrible realization. Elder Nalthis had not responded to any communication since the explosion. His ship, if it still existed, was lost somewhere in the reborn star's nuclear fires. "Elder!" called Kirathon, desperately. "Can you hear us?" For long minutes, there was no answer. The star burned steadily, fed by the solar collector network, but the old Valoran seemed to be gone. Then, faintly, a familiar voice spoke through the communication system. "I am here, my people. Changed, but here." Elder Nalthis's ship emerged from the stellar core, but it was transformed. The metal hull glowed with inner light, and the ship moved without using any visible engines. Inside, the Elder sat in his pilot's chair, but his crystal body now pulsed with the same energy as the star itself. "The deep meld worked better than I expected," he explained weakly. "I am still connected to the stellar core. As long as the star burns, part of me will burn with it." Dr. Haya Jin ran urgent scans on both the star and the Elder. "The connection is permanent," she reported with wonder. "He's become a living part of the stellar system. If anything threatens the star again, he'll know immediately." As news of the victory spread throughout the galaxy, something unprecedented happened. Species that had been enemies for centuries began talking to each other. The example of humans and Velorans working together inspired others to reconsider old prejudices. Admiral Vextul was the most surprised of anyone. His entire worldview had been based on the idea that military strength determined who ruled the galaxy. But he had just watched a handful of primitive humans accomplish something his mighty fleet could never have imagined. "Ambassador Tae Min," he called over the communication system. His voice was different now, uncertain rather than commanding. "My government will want a full report on what happened here." "Tell them whatever you want," Tae Min replied. "Tell them that when people work together, impossible things become possible." Years later, historians would call it the Veloran miracle, but the people who lived through it knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was simply what happened when beings cared enough about each other to risk everything for strangers. The monument they built above the Veloran homeworld told the true story. Made of human metal and Veloran crystal, it bore a simple inscription in dozens of languages. When the light was dying, strangers became family, and love proved stronger than physics. Elder Nalthis, forever changed by his merger with the star, often visited the monument. He would tell young beings from many species about the day humans kept a promise that seemed impossible to keep.